I woke up slowly, my head still heavy from the anesthesia. The white hospital ceiling blurred above me, and I heard the steady beeping of a monitor somewhere near my bed. For a moment, I wasn't even sure where I was. My chest felt tight, my throat dry, and all I wanted was water. But then I caught a woman's voice, firm, irritated, and just loud enough to cut through the fog in my head. Why would she approve that transfer? The words stabbed through me sharper than any scalpel could. My mind tried to catch up with my body, sluggish and confused. Who was talking? Why were they talking about me? I blinked and turned my head slowly, and there she was, the HR director from my office, standing at the foot of my bed with my manager. My heart jumped. My body felt weak, but my mind was spinning. What transfer? What did she mean? And why, of all places, were they having this conversation here, right after my surgery? Let me back up for a moment. A few weeks before this surgery, I had applied for an internal transfer. I'd been stuck in the same department for 3 years, under a manager who treated me like furniture, not a human being. I was qualified, I worked hard, and I knew I could do more if given the chance. So when I saw the posting for a role in another division, I put in my application immediately. It wasn't just about a better paycheck, though yes, it paid more. It was about dignity, growth, escaping the grip of a boss who had made my life a quiet misery for too long. I'd gotten the call from HR right before I went in for surgery. My transfer had been approved. For the first time in months, I'd felt hope rising in me, relief, a future I could picture without dread. And then I went into surgery thinking the next chapter of my career was waiting when I came out. But here I was, barely conscious, hearing my HR director practically spitting out the words, "Why would she approve that transfer?" I lay there, unable to move much, but my mind raced. Approve? She said approve, not request. That meant someone already signed off. Someone had seen my potential, but the tone in her voice made it clear. She wasn't happy about it. My body trembled, partly from weakness, partly from a new kind of fear. The HR director was someone people whispered about in the halls, ruthless, calculated, always smiling in public but tearing reputations apart behind closed doors. I couldn't understand why she'd even be here, in this hospital room, right after I'd gone under the knife. What business of hers was my transfer? Unless it was bigger than just paperwork? I glanced at my manager, who shifted nervously as she talked. He avoided looking at me, even though my eyes were open. I realized then they didn't know I was awake. They thought I couldn't hear, and that gave me an edge. Their words would come out raw, unfiltered, a truth I was never supposed to hear. She kept talking, her voice low but sharp. This transfer makes no sense. She doesn't have the seniority. And if we let her go, who's going to handle the workload here? You can't seriously believe she's ready for this step. My manager murmured something I couldn't catch, but she cut him off quickly. No, I don't care what justification was written. I want to know who signed off, who thought this was a good idea. My heart twisted. They were talking about me like I was some pawn on a chessboard. Not a person, not someone who had spent years working late nights, fixing their mistakes, covering shifts, taking on responsibilities no one else wanted. In that hospital bed, tubes in my arm, stitches still fresh, I wanted to scream. I wanted to sit up and tell her everything I'd done, every sacrifice I had made, but I couldn't. My body was too weak, my throat too raw. All I could do was listen, and with every word she spoke, my determination hardened. If she thought I wasn't ready, I'd prove her wrong. I drifted in and out over the next hour, painkillers pulling me under, but her words clung to me like thorns. When I fully woke again, they were gone, but my mind was burning. Why did she care so much? HR is supposed to be neutral, right? They're supposed to support employees, not stand in their way. But if you've ever worked in an office like mine, you know that's not always the truth. HR doesn't always protect the employee. Often, they protect the company. And if someone like me, someone not in their inner circle, tried to climb too fast, it threatened the balance they'd worked hard to control. That was the first time I realized my transfer wasn't just about me. It was about power, about who gets to rise and who gets kept down. And whether I liked it or not, I had just stumbled into a game much bigger than myself. When I was discharged and returned home, I checked my emails. At first, everything looked normal. The official approval of my transfer was still there, with my start date set for the following month. But then, a day later, I got another email. Due to unforeseen circumstances, your transfer has been put on hold. My stomach dropped. I knew immediately whose hands were behind that message. And just like that, my small taste of victory had been snatched away. I felt the weight of helplessness pressing down on me. I was recovering from surgery, my body too weak to fight, and now the career move I had pinned my hopes on was slipping away. But then, something shifted in me. I realized I had a choice. I could let them quietly push me back into my corner, or I could fight for the future I wanted. And this time, I wasn't going to be silent. I started gathering everything. Every performance review, every email from clients thanking me, every commendation I'd received. I built a folder that told my story better than I could say it out, loud. Then I reached out directly to the executive who had signed off on my transfer. It took courage. My hands shook as I typed the email, but I knew if I didn't speak up, no one would. I explained my situation, my recovery, and how much this transfer meant to me. I didn't mention the hospital conversation, not yet. But I made it clear that pulling back the transfer would not just hurt me, it would undermine the process that was supposed to be fair. To my surprise, the executive responded. "Let me look into this personally," they wrote. My heart raced. Maybe, just maybe, there was still hope. Days turned into weeks as I healed, waiting for answers. Then, one morning, I got a call. It was the executive's office. They told me they had reviewed my case, and the transfer would go through as originally planned. My start date was confirmed. I almost cried right there on the phone. But more than joy, I felt vindication. I had faced a system that tried to silence me, and I'd managed to push back. Still, the shadow of that hospital conversation haunted me, because it made me see the truth. Advancement wasn't just about skill or effort. It was about politics, and the HR director had marked me as someone who stepped out of line. I knew this battle was won, but the war wasn't over. On my first day in the new department, I walked in with my head high. People congratulated me, shook my hand, welcomed me aboard. But in the back of my mind, I felt eyes watching. I knew she hadn't forgotten. The HR director. I caught her glance once in the hallway. A polite smile on her face, but a sharpness in her eyes that sent chills down my spine. She didn't say a word, but the message was clear. I had gone against her, and she didn't like it. I understood then that every step forward would be met with resistance, that success wasn't just about doing good work, but also about navigating the hidden landmines of office politics. But I also realized something even more powerful. I wasn't afraid anymore. Looking back, that moment in the hospital, waking up to her voice, hearing her question why my transfer was approved, it changed everything for me. It opened my eyes to the games people play behind the scenes, the battles that are fought quietly while most employees never even know they exist. It taught me that silence is a weapon used against us, and the only way to fight back is with our own voice, our own truth. I don't regret hearing her words. In fact, I'm grateful, because they lit a fire in me that still burns today. So, if you ever find yourself in a position where someone questions your worth, where someone tries to block your path, remember this. Their doubt is not your destiny. Your persistence, your courage, your refusal to give up. That's what shapes your future. And sometimes, the most unexpected moments, like waking up from surgery, are the ones that remind you just how strong you really are.